Okay, here we are at the kind of default start screen for ZBrush. And what I'm going to talk about first is a little bit about user interface configuration. Because we're able to customize this to make our workflow a little bit quicker. And I'm not going to customize it too much so that things look familiar to you guys who are using this kind of unconfigured. But I'm going to do a couple things that speed up my workflow. And so I'll walk you through this because it's important to understand and also to configure yourself. Okay, so first thing I'm going to turn off Lightbox. Not a help for me. And what I'm going to do is to make a custom menu that I can assign to a hotkey. Right, so it'll be a floating menu so that when I'm on the canvas somewhere, I can hit it, and it will resemble this, but it's going to be more, which pops up with the space bar. But it's going to be exactly what I want and the tools that I use most. Okay, so we're going to start with preferences, and how we enable customization is in the config, and we go enable customize, and from here we get a bunch of shelf space to drop things, and everything can be moved around and pulled off and customized by holding Control and Alt. So first what we want to do is we want to make a custom UI, and I'm going to create a new menu, and I'm going to call it My Stuff. You can call it whatever you want. It doesn't matter. You see it pops up here, and there's nothing in it. I'm going to dock this over to the side. So it's currently empty, and I'm going to pull off some of the things that I use most. I'm going to kill this light menu for now. And really what I want is some of the brush configuration stuff at the top. So I'm going to take Z intensity and focal shift. I'm going to put those up there. If you grab them from here, they will disappear, right? So we don't really want to pull things off there because you'll notice that it's now gone. And I want to leave that there for you. So I'm going to put this back. And you want to get it really from the menu that it comes out in originally. So the draw menu has Z intensity. So I'm going to grab that and drop it up here. And the draw menu, as I pull it down, also has focal shift. I control my draw size with something that comes by default in ZBrush. If you open ZPlug under MIST Utilities, you have these two kind of brush adjustments, which you can see if you look at the draw size on the screen right here. As I press these, this sizes up and down your brush by 10 pixels, 10 units, I guess. And so I actually end up mapping those to my square brackets so that when I'm on the computer, I can hit square brackets up and square brackets down and go 10 pixels either way. Which is exactly what Photoshop does, so it's great, and it kind of is consistent between those. And actually, from there, I then map that to my Wacom tablet, but I'll talk about that in a separate lecture. Okay, so under this menu, I have focal shift and Z intensity. Move Z intensity to the top, and then I'm going to put my my tool move, draw, and scale commands. So these guys right here. So let me just get something on the screen. And actually, it's not those guys that I want. It's these guys from across the top of the document. Okay, so I'll go to transform, and it's not these, it's these guys up here. This actually moves your canvas around, or moves the model around on the canvas. But we want these, which is draw mode, transpose, move, rotate, and scale. Okay, so I'm going to Control, Alt, drag, drop that there, drop that there, drop that there, drop that there. So this will just pop up anytime I'm on the canvas, and eventually I'll map this My Stuff menu to a hotkey, so it'll pop up, and actually it looks like this. Okay, so it is mapped already, but I'll show you how to do that. Okay, so that's those. And then I like to have the subdivision slider next. I'm actually going to move these up top. And then subdivision slider is going to go next, so I need a poly mesh on the screen with subdivision levels, so I'm going to make poly mesh. And down here under the geometry tab, I'm going to divide, and hopefully I can drag this up from here, like so. And as we work through our exercises, when we get into the full figures, we'll start to use subdivisions quite a bit just to control our mesh levels and give us kind of a really nice lattice to kind of move big points around with. Okay, so that's sub D. And then I have lights, right? So I generally will have this big light icon dropped over in my palette, because it's really important when you're working, and I'll try to move this down, try to make it not look awkward. It's really important when you're working to be able to adjust the lighting conditions for your mesh, or your sculpture, because really that's what assessing something in 3D is all about. It's about how the planes react to light. And in traditional sculpture, you often kind of go around with a flashlight or a candle or some way to vary the lighting conditions to see what you're working on with kind of fresh eyes in new light. Okay, so that's why I have this, and I usually have this just as my key light that I'll drag around. We have a matte cap right now, so it's not doing anything, but I'll show you with something like this. So really, you end up, as you're working, you're able to just pop this up and adjust your light and see how it looks kind of lit from the side, see how it how it reacts frontally, adjust the subdivisions, I don't have any real form created, and this is a little bit bright right now, the light, but just whack that down. So you can see this is actually a custom material that I've made, and I'll talk about that in the material lecture. Okay, so that's it. The light is there, and then generally I'll take my two favorite materials. All this is depends on taste, but I like to use matte cap gray, and I like to use this material that I've made myself, which is a customization of the double shade material, right? So it reacts to the lights. Okay, and that's that. And then kind of in the last layer, I put some brush modifiers, some things out of the stroke palette, because a lot of times I like to have lazy mouse and control lazy mouse for standard brush or otherwise. And when you have lazy mouse on and you're in, say, standard brush over here, you have something called stroke length, lazy radius. And I'm just going to try to get this, drop it over here underneath. And there's a few other things that come in handy when you have curve mode, which we'll use a little bit when we're doing some of our Dynamesh stuff. This snapshot button is really cool and really useful. So I'll just have that just randomly assigned over there. And you guys can feel free to populate the rest of the menu with things that you find useful. I'm going to have my polyframe on here somewhere. I will get it from up here, from transform menu, because polyframe actually, when you're running at 720p record size, it doesn't give you a lot of real estate in the ZBrush window, so I don't actually have access to it from down there. It scrolls off the screen, so polyframe is there. And anything else that I like. One more kind of utility thing is from color, clear layer. I try actually, when I'm dropping all these things here because when I'm working, I don't like to be on the keyboard at all. I like to just be on my tablet. So I'm on my tablet, left hand holds my pen because I'm left-handed. Right hand is on my configured buttons on the Wacom tablet. Right, so if I can't do it with those, then then I reach for the keyboard. But in general, I'll try to keep things accessible in this region and with a single pop-up menu. Right, so what I have here is just kind of my general configuration for sculpting. I have different layouts that I use depending on what I'm doing in ZBrush. If I'm doing production work and making a lot of blend shapes, facial expressions, I end up having a lot of controls for layers and a lot of controls for the morph targets and blending. And so it kind of looks a little bit different. But this is kind of will be my general layout. And I'll have my brushes mapped to the numpad. So I can hit the numpad right hand as well, 1 through 9. And I'll talk about my favorite brushes in the brush lecture. Okay, so that's kind of the short introduction to configuring your interface. To get this all to pop up, first let's turn off config. Actually, I'm going to put, before I finish, I'm going to put one of these spacers into this to kind of separate my materials from all my lazy mouse and brush settings. Okay, so that's all these things do, is these are just fillers, so block placeholders, and you can just drag them and put them somewhere in here to separate this. And it actually shows up as nothing when you turn configuration off. And so enable customize off, you can see this is what my menu looks like. I can kill this. And to hotkey something, it's the same thing that we do to tear something off when we're in config. You do Control-Alt and click. And it says press any combination. And I generally will customize it with the semicolon. So same hotkey is already assigned to this interface item. I've already assigned it. So that's that. And then anywhere on the canvas, if you hit your hotkey, it'll pop it up. So it's great to have just what you want, where you want it, which is pretty much close to where you're sculpting. And finally, to save this, you want to go to Preferences and hit Store Config. And it will save this to the master configuration file. We'll hit OK, and it will load this on startup. So you get this. Alternately, if you wanted to have it somewhere else, you could say Save UI and give it a name, and that would save it, and you could load it on demand, but it wouldn't necessarily load on startup. Okay, feel free to configure your interface any other way that you want. I'm going to try to keep this pretty close to what is default, so that anybody who opens up and is working from these videos doesn't see a strange alien interface, but something pretty close to what comes out of the box. Okay, that's all for this lecture.